It seems like a lot of people who have complex trauma that is primarily from emotional neglect will really downplay that as like not a like meaningful trauma or not a meaningful experience. And I recently thought about a kind of just like a metaphor or an example that I think can kind of help validate why it really would have a huge, or it does have a really huge impact on somebody's like emotional development or even just like their emotional experience as a kid. Imagine that there is a single adult who has no family. They get into a severe car accident that requires them to be hospitalized and to have like 24/7 care for a while. So they are left at the mercy of like nurses in a hospital for a while. But even without speech or like overt communication, nurse that comes on shift is having some sort of mental health issues of their own that aren't, of course, this patient's fault, but they come in and they are often depressed or angry, or maybe they're really resentful. Maybe they really don't like this line of work that they found themselves in. Maybe they are kind of cold and detached, and maybe when they are moving this person around or like cleaning their wounds or whatever, they're just kind of like brusque or rough and just kind of cold and detached. And when they like feed this person, they're kind of rushing through it, and they're, you know, kind of disconnected and in their own head. And then there's another nurse who sometimes comes on shift with the same patient, and that person also doesn't necessarily even speak, but solely from their body language, the patient can tell that this nurse is present, that they find value in taking care of others, in meeting other people's needs when they're in this significant time of need, when they're sick or injured. And when they feed them, it is with patience, and they are just emotionally, they don't seem resentful at all. And there can even be a sense of warmth and just kind of mutual presence, and just experiencing these moments together in at least a neutral, if not a positive way, without conversation even needing to be part of the scenario. And these two different nurses, the difference really isn't about the patient. It's really about them and how they feel about their job and what they have going on in their personal life and their views on their job and this work that they're doing. And yet, I think it would make a whole lot of sense if literally anybody who would be this patient would walk away from an experience with the resentful nurse feeling like they really were a burden when they were a patient, or like they really, really disliked having to rely on that nurse, that that was just an emotionally unpleasant experience, where a patient who had exclusively the other type of nurse probably still isn't going to be grateful or happy about their time in the hospital. Who wants to be in the hospital, right? But they're far less likely to feel like it was a terrible thing, and that to have like new insecurities about being burdened. Maybe they even have some positive memories because they built some sort of a connection with this nurse who maybe made them feel dignified in moments where they were uncertain of if it was okay to retain dignity when needing the level of care that they needed. Maybe they found ways to reassure them and normalize being dependent. And maybe that was even a little healing for the person. And I think if having such a dramatically different perception of these two experiences from an as an adult makes sense, then I think it has to make sense that for a baby to have a mother that is, whether it's depressed or traumatized or just didn't really want to be a mom, just doesn't enjoy motherhood, or is in a bad marriage, or, the endless other possibilities of things that go on with mothers who are struggling and who fail to successfully attune to and really bond well with their babies versus mothers who are capable of attuning well and being present. I think even the ways that, if you think about how, if your spouse or somebody you've dated before were in a bad mood and agreed to cuddle you only because you asked them to, but you could tell they weren't really feeling it, couldn't you sense that in their body? Their body would be a little bit rigid or a little bit tense, or they'd be a little too quiet. It would be a different experience versus when that same person is really present with and enjoying cuddling you. It doesn't require a shared spoken language for us to understand kind of like emotional vibes or emotional presence. And so when you think about all of the little interactions that babies have with their caregivers on the average day, the diaper changes and feedings and being bathed and being put in and out of their car seat, the like the degree of softness or gentleness or the amount of tension in that adult's body, the speed at which they are carried around or transferred from a car seat into being held or etc. Babies can pick up on all of that, and they feel the energy, and their brains are developing, and they have no awareness of whether or not that is mom having a bad day or dad having a bad day, or if this is a personal problem for the baby. And when the parent has a chronic problem to where the norm is for that caregiver to not be well attuned, I think it just makes so much sense that that was going to cause significant changes in that baby's development, in that type of relationship that's being built with that caregiver in that first year of life.